Oh, hello my friends! Such a perfect day to become Vikings and learn how to make mead, isn't it? A mead is basically a wine made from honey and water. You can start with a carboy like this. This is just a glass carboy, and it's just got this plastic to protect it. I know that in the States you usually have them without this plastic, but that's the same thing, just don't break it. And then you can get a cork, for instance like this one, that closes it. And the next step is to drill this cork. I cannot find that one, so I've got another one here that I can show you, which is bigger. But it's the same idea. Drill it all the way through. And if you want to make a perfect match, just put some glue here or some silicone or whatever you want to close it completely, to seal it. Now this thing that you can put here is an airlock. You can get it in a wine making store or from the internet. It must cost like very little, I don't know, like maybe 50 cents or €1, $1. It should be pretty cheap. What this does, when you put it on top of your carboy, is that basically you fill it with water. Ooh, I spilled most of it on my legs, nice. Now you can see that this filled with water, and this level is almost the same level like this. So the air that is coming from inside the carboy has to pass like this, then go down here through the water, and get up here out of the water, and come out. So the carbon dioxide that is going to be produced by the fermentation that is going to happen in the carboy, with this device you will be able to allow it to go out, so that the carboy doesn't get a huge grenade and explode and fill every meat and glass everywhere. And instead it will come through that and get out, while the water will not allow any microorganisms to go into the meat, because the water will keep them there. They will not be able to go through that and then go into the meat. Very clever idea. Now, how you do it? You take this carboy and you first wash it very well inside with soap and water. Make sure there's no soap remaining. And if you want to make a really good sterilization, which will help, you probably won't have a problem, but if you want to be totally sure that it's not going to be contaminated by some other kind of microorganisms, just find some kind of white powder like this. This is called metabisulfite. You don't need much, just this much is probably enough for the entire carboy to be totally sterilized, and there will be no living microorganism after you do that. Just fill it with water, and with this, perfectly sterilized, and then just wash it again with water so that you don't have any metabisulfite inside your drink, and then you can start. Now another thing to say is that the best material for carboy or any kind of container that you make meat in is glass. Glass is the best. And steel, but you have to make sure that it's totally sealed, that no air can get inside. Because I know that there are plastic fermentation containers that people usually make beer with. For beer it's kind of okay, because beer takes just a few days, while this is going to take a month. It takes a lot of days. And contrary to popular belief, plastic isn't impenetrable to air. Air can get inside. And if air gets inside the fermentation, then instead of alcohol, those microorganisms, when they have oxygen, they start producing vinegar. That's how you make vinegar. Like if you have an apple juice, for instance, with oxygen, you make vinegar, apple vinegar, and without oxygen you make apple cider. That's the difference. Now the honey. You can use any honey you like. You can even use maple syrup if you're into that kind of thing. And for this 5-liter carboy, the amount of honey you will need is 1 to 2 kilos. 1 kilo will give you a pretty light mead that will not be very sweet, and almost all of its sugars will become alcohol, so it's not going to be very sweet. And it's going to be pretty light as well. The alcohol will not be the maximum. And 2 kilos, it will mean that the alcohol that you get will be maximum, and there will be also sugar that didn't become alcohol, so it will be sweet and strong. 1.5 kilo of honey is like a compromise between the two, and pretty standard. So I would suggest probably 1.5 kilo of honey for 5 liters of mead. So how you do it? You take a pot, you dissolve the honey into a little bit of water, just a little, like a glass of water. That's enough to dissolve any amount of honey you want. You will see that this works like that in reality. And you just heat it up, not too much, just enough so that the honey becomes liquid. Then fill up half your container with water. The best is, of course, bottled water or some kind of filtered water, that it doesn't have any chlorine or other additives inside, which will make the taste worse. So to keep the best taste possible, just fill it up with some kind of good water. Then put inside here with using a funnel, drop the liquid, the honey with the water into this carboy, and then fill it up with water to the top, so that it fills up to the top, and then you are ready. Then you can put this cork with the airlock on top, and then it will start fermenting after a couple of days. Now the problem is that for perfect fermentation, the honey doesn't have all the things it needs. So a good practice is to add the juice of one lemon without, the solid components. Just strain it very well and add the juice of one lemon into the carboy, and that will give it some, nitrogen and some other minerals that they will help the honey ferment properly. It will start bubbling and it will keep bubbling for about a month. You should keep it in a cool place while it bubbles, and preferably without sunlight. If you keep it in a warm place, it will probably ferment faster, but the taste will be better if you keep it in a cold place. And in order to start the fermentation, you will need, of course, yeast. It's not going to start fermenting by itself, unless you put the honey in there without heating it up at all, and you somehow dissolve it by mixing it for, 2 hours. Because then it keeps on the honey. There is some yeast, some natural yeast, but that yeast is unpredictable. You don't know what taste it will give you. You may get a fantastic, very complex taste or not. The most standard way is just to heat it up so that it kind of not only makes the honey liquid. You can put it in the carboy and mix it with the water very easily, but it also kind of sterilizes it, pasteurizes it mostly, and then you can add some kind of wine yeast or some kind of ale yeast, whatever you want. These are like two champagne yeasts, like some wine yeasts that I usually like to use because I like the taste they give. And you just need one package of that. Just search for ale or wine yeast on the internet. You'll find very easily. There are some cheap ones. You don't need to get something very expensive. And as a small information, contrary to popular belief again, you can use bread yeast for mead or for any kind of alcohol. You can, but it's not going to give you such a complex taste. But you can totally use it. It's like the same family. It's just not a specialized yeast for making alcohol that tastes nice and complex. It's going to give you a strange taste after a long time of racking, of course. Now, at the end of that month, of approximately 1 month, depending on the conditions, the yeast you used, the honey you used, everything, the water, if it had chlorine or not, it will take about a month. It will stop bubbling. The airlock will stop making bubbles, which means that no more carbon dioxide is produced inside the carboy, which means, in turn, that the fermentation is not going on anymore. In order to make sure that all the sugar that you wanted to turn into alcohol has become alcohol, you should actually open the container, let it breathe for some time. Just for a little, like some hours. Maybe stir it a bit also if you can, so that, like with a stick or something sterilized or washed very well at least, so that you introduce some air inside of it. Because sometimes the fermentation with mead, because it takes such a long time, and makes a lot of alcohol, and it's a long process. Sometimes the oxygen finishes and the microorganisms cannot reproduce and work anymore without a little bit of oxygen. So it needs a little bit of oxygen, and it will then keep fermenting, start fermenting again. If you do that, you close it, you leave it for a few days, and nothing happens, then, if you leave it for a week, and after that, and nothing happens, then you're ready to bottle. Or to rack into another container or whatever. Then it's ready, basically. If it starts bubbling, then wait until it finishes, and just to be sure, it's better to take your time than to be hasty. Just to be sure, wait a few days more before you bottle or you rack it. Now, after it's finished, the danger, if you haven't let it complete its process entirely, the danger is that you may bottle it, or you may put it in some container that is closed, of course, so that it doesn't get air, and it might start fermenting again, and it might explode the container. It has happened to me before with beer bottles, so it's not a nice thing to clean glass and drink from all over the place. So a good practice after it's finished fermenting is actually to rack it into another container, because it will have sediment at the bottom of the container, of the carboy. And you want to take the drink, but to leave the sediment. The sediment will make it cloudy, and it doesn't really taste all that good if it's mixed with So you need to make that without disturbing it too much. You can just use some simple tubing to pass it from one container to the other. Just put one end into the liquid, suck it so it starts flowing, and make sure this container is standing on a higher table or chair than the other one, so that once it starts flowing, it doesn't stop. And make sure that you put this down and down and down and down, that you take all the liquid that you want without disturbing the sediment in the bottom. Also make sure that the other end, that is inside the other carboy, that it doesn't get into that liquid, because then you actually use your mouth to suck in the beginning to make it start. And if it gets inside, there are still some germs in the outside, like the outside of this end. The outside has some germs from your mouth. If it flows like that and it's on the air, it's fine, because on the inside it's clean. But on the outside there are those germs, and it's good to not introduce them to the alcohol. Not quite yet, not until you're ready to drink it anyway. And then you just keep it at a distance from the level of the other carboy, yeah? So the end result will be this. 5 liters of pure magnificence. So after you rack the carboy of Mead into another carboy, or if you bottle it, whatever you want, it's pretty much ready to drink and enjoy. But the best practice is to actually let it age a little. It will improve its taste tenfold. It will improve its taste very much, refine it very much, and make it a really, really pleasant drink to drink. While if you don't, it will be a little rough and a little unrefined. All you need to do for that is just to put it as it is in your new carboy, or in the bottles if you bottle this. Just put it in a dark place with a low temperature, preferably. If it's high, it's kind of okay, but preferable is low temperature. So if you let it stand there for 6 months, it will become really good. If you let it stand there for 1 year, it will become amazing. And if you let it stand more, it will become slightly better too. Although you shouldn't let it stand too many years, because of course it may go bad then. So, after you have fulfilled that old Viking tradition and you have made your own mead at home, just make sure that this bottle, this 5 liters of magnificence, is not something you're gonna drink on your own. Make sure you will invite some friends and enjoy it together. So my friends, until the next time, Wassail! Oh, hello my friends! Such a perfect day to become Vikings and learn how to make mead, isn't it? A mead is basically a wine made from honey and water. You can start with a carboy like this. This is just a glass carboy, and it's just got this plastic to protect it. I know that in the States you usually have them without this plastic, but that's the same thing, just don't break it. And then you can get a cork, for instance like this one, that closes it. And the next step is to drill this cork. I cannot find that one, so I've got another one here that I can show you, which is bigger. But it's the same idea. Drill it all the way through. And if you want to make a perfect match, just put some glue here, or some silicone, or whatever you want to close it completely, to seal it. Now, this thing that you can put here is an airlock. You can get it in a wine making store or from the internet. It must cost like very little, I don't know, like maybe 50 cents or €1, $1. It should be pretty cheap. What this does, when you put it on top of your carboy, is that basically you fill it with water,